So hello and welcome to today's video. So this is going to be one of my more UK centric videos, so I'm not really sure this kind of service was available elsewhere. I mean, I did a quick search and apparently it was available in Ireland and Australia, but I don't know if this thing was around in America, Canada, Finland or whatever, so yeah. So back in the early 2000s, satellite TV was becoming the norm across the UK. I don't need to go over what satellite TV was, but basically if you had a Skybox, your family was deemed well off. Not insanely wealthy, keep in mind, but good enough I guess. Now, Sky was an entertainment provider in the form of movies, TV, and if we're talking past 9 PM adult content, not that I would know anything about that. But they did have quite a few bonus features available via their interactive section, which could be accessed in two ways, either by the interactive section on the Sky Guide, or by pressing the red button on certain TV shows. I honestly only remember using this to play games, because when I actually googled it for this video, there was a lot of options that I didn't remember whatsoever, and looking at it now it's pretty much all live gambling. And I still don't know what DirectGov or TV keys means even 20 years on. But when I was younger, of course I'd be watching Cartoon Network, enjoying an episode of Billy and Mandy, and then in the top corner there'd be like a notification, a red button in a rectangle kind of notification. And if you pressed it, it'd often open up Sky Games. Well, once again you could just go directly to it via the interactive guide. And upon opening Sky Games, or Sky GameStar as it used to be known, you'd be greeted with a plethora of all kinds of games to choose from. And I believe they rotated often, so one week you might have, say, SpongeBob, and the next week it might be replaced by Tomb Raider, and after that it'll be the Powerpuff Girls. And unlike the vast majority of consoles, where the entire library is often archived for, well, archival purposes and definitely not piracy, the majority of these games are actually lost media, and I'm still not sure how these games were even transmitted. I've seen some people say they were downloaded when you played them and others saying they were flash-based games, and I don't know the technology behind the Skybox, and given the time this was happening, the average Joe wasn't hacking the Skybox. Now, how these games operated was on a pay-to-play basis. You either got the first level free or a time trial, and after that you get asked about paying for the game. And this wasn't just like a one-time purchase like buying something off the PlayStation Store, it was a pay pretty much every single time you played. Very similar to an arcade, I guess. And if you selected yes, it automatically got added to the bill payer's next bill. And I'm pretty sure many of us selected yes regardless to whatever our parents said, because we automatically assumed they wouldn't know. And I'm not even denying this, I just simply remember doing it a few times when I wanted to play some games on the Skybox after school. There was also a day pass option, which is basically what it says, for the next 24 hours you got unlimited access to the entire Sky Games library. And to be honest, I still don't know if the bill flat out said extra cost Sky Games or whatever, because I never got in trouble for it. But for an optional gaming service, they had a very, and I mean a very strong selection of licensed games to choose from. And for a side feature, they really went all out in licensing. They had games from SpongeBob, Ben 10, Avatar, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Lego, Shrek, and even iCarly, to even relatively niche British things like Deal or No Deal, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, Golden Balls, and even Carol Vorderman and Graham Norton got their own games on here. Yeah, Graham Norton, the talk show host, he had a game on here. Now, I don't know how they managed to afford the rights to all of these brands to have games made of them. It must have cost a damn fortune. My best guess is maybe it was paid for by the amount of kids going behind their parents' backs to play these games to begin with. But when it came to the quality of the games, well, it's a satellite box we're playing on. So all of them were 2D, I believe. You won't be finding GTA San Andreas on this anytime soon. And for the majority of ones I remember, the sound was mixed. Like, some games only had basic background sounds, others only had background music and no other sounds. And secondly, as you'd expect, your gaming controller was the Sky Remote, which I guess is very similar to how you used to play those games on old DVDs. They really weren't made for gaming at all, and I'm also very surprised to see nobody's tried to port Doom to the Skybox yet. But one of my favourite games on the Sky Satellite Box had to be Cartoon Carnage. It's probably my favourite Sky game of all time. It was pretty much a Worms ripoff, but with Cartoon Network characters instead. And in that game you had to choose from either Foster Home for Imaginary Friends, Scooby-Doo or Tom and Jerry. And it was a turn-based game. You had to fight the other team in destructible terrain using weapons like explosives or whatnot. Before every batch you had to spend points on Arsenal. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have somewhat strong memories of TNT being extremely overpowered, because once you threw it, it turned a considerable amount of the terrain into TNT. So one explosive would decimate the character that stood on it, especially if they were the last character to have a turn. Now, this game was really fun, I remember, and it's also weird in a way because I've never really been a fan of the Worms games growing up. I never disliked the series, I just preferred platformers more so than Worms. I can't remember which one I had growing up and I never really played it, so why I adored Cartoon Carnage, which is pretty much a stripped down version of Worms, is a complete mystery to me. My best guess is because I was a big fan of the cartoons that were featured in this. Foster's Home, Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry, they were all great shows. So I guess it kind of stuck out to me more. But if you were to ask any kid who grew up with a skybox about the games they had, most would mention Beehive Bedlam. The game itself is relatively simple, you just match the ball, or well flower I guess in this case, to a flower of the same colour before the timer runs out in the form of a stick. It's a very simple, very casual, very addictive game. It's the kind of game even your nan would probably enjoy because of how easily accessible it was. There's not much to really say about this one, it's one of those games that was just iconic for what it was. I think it was also the only game that was a permanent addition to the Sky Games library. So I guess it reached way more people than say games based on Deal or No Deal. And because of how simple the controls were, it definitely had an appeal to older people who probably weren't playing SSX Tricky on PS2. In a very weird way, it's like looking at mobile games before the mobile game era. Like I can find games similar to Beehive Bedlam on my phone, but obviously riddled with ads beyond belief, or pay us $5.99 and we'll get rid of ads forever. Now so far the games we've covered have been relatively simple ones, I'd say very arcade-esque. But there were a few games that did follow a slight single player story, and the one that sticks out to me the most is Ed, Edd n Eddy. And I'm not talking about the misadventures, but Night of the Living Ed. I think what makes this one stand out is how the people behind this clearly paid attention to the source material, at least somewhat. The first part of course being the game name. If you're a fan of Ed, Edd n Eddy, you know every single episode of the show always had one word swapped out with Ed, like Dawn of the Eds, Ready Set Ed and so on. So the title is very in line. Secondly, it's like an unofficial sequel to the episode The Day the Ed Stood Still. In that episode, Ed becomes a monster and terrorises the cul-de-sac by kidnapping the kids and sticks them to walls covered in chunky puffs. Now this game follows a similar premise to that, because the game just flat out starts with Ed turning into a monster about 2 seconds in. And once again, remember this is on a satellite box, so we're not expecting the storytelling quality of Red Dead Redemption 2 here. And playing as Eddie, you're tasked with rescuing the kids caught up in Ed's little rampage, while also taking their jawbreakers and money. Now Eddie has to navigate the cul-de-sac, rescuing kids that certainly don't exist in the show, and sometimes ones that actually do, armed with a water pistol, and on some occasions Ed himself also appears to give chase. And speaking of that, the only thing this game got wrong is how Double D has upgrades for Eddie and you pay him in jawbreakers. Anybody even remotely familiar with Eddie knows he'd rather die than give anybody a single jawbreaker. I'm not really sure what game this may or may not be based upon. I think it kind of reminds me of the really old Zelda games, going off the top-down dungeon-like approach. I'm guessing somebody who's more into Zelda would probably be more familiar with that than me. Now when I looked this up, it turns out this game lasts about 30 minutes to an hour, which for a satellite box game is extremely impressive. There are some full console games out there that are way shorter, like Super Mario Bros can be beaten in 30 minutes on a casual playthrough. But yeah, as I said earlier in the video, there were so many different licensed games on here, even from shows that I completely forgot ever existed, like Robot Boy. I legitimately remember absolutely nothing about Robot Boy except for one of the characters being a fat ginger kid, and the only other thing I remember about it is playing the game of it once. I don't know what else to say about that one, but yeah, it's kind of weird how some shows that weren't really that big. Sorry to any Robot Boy fans out there, I just want to clarify that right now, but yeah, it's kind of weird how some shows that weren't really that big still got games on this service. And what's even weirder to me is how there's actually fully fledged gaming brands that also had games on the Skybox, like Tomb Raider. I don't ever remember playing any of the Tomb Raiders on this. I wouldn't say I'm a die-hard Tomb Raider fanatic, but I remember playing and enjoying a few games on the PS1. Yeah, I can't remember playing any of them on there, but it's still weird to think that Tomb Raider was that massive, they was even licensing their games out to be played on the Skybox of all things. But from my memories of them, most of these games are really, really fun. Of course I cannot cover every single game because 1, I can't remember everything I played, 2, I didn't play the entire library, and 3, I'm not talking about this for 5 hours straight. Plus a lot of these games are lost media too. Sky Games was weirdly charming in its own way, like many of us of course owned proper consoles, a PS2, a DS or whatever, which definitely offered a stronger experience. But I think part of the charm was just watching a show, and then going on Sky Games and seeing there was a game to play about that show as well. Especially when said TV show never had any official games out. Because I don't think there were ever any games that involved Billy and Mandy or Johnny Bravo, at least standalone like Ed, Edd n Eddy got, but yet they could be found here. I'd say it was like a virtual arcade in a way, you had so many games to choose from and so little time and money to actually play them. Kind of reminiscent of old Newgrounds and Miniclip for sure. Now luckily, quite a few of these games have been fully archived and are properly playable, even going as far as to be playable in browser for the PC. I'm not sure about mobile, so I think they are PC only, but the ones that are archived are worth checking out for nostalgia's sake, and this time they're actually free so there's no pay to play. And because of how popular the smartphone gaming market is, There is legitimately no reason to kind of have this service up anymore, especially when it comes to puzzle games. So of course the service has shut down. Now I don't know if they've rebooted it in some way, I mean they probably have, but yeah, that was me yapping too much about some obscure tech from over 20 years ago. Do you have any memories of Sky GameStar? And if so, what games did you play? Because one other game I remember playing the absolute hell out of was Tom and Jerry. I think it was House Trap, I can't remember the exact name of it. But it's one where you play as Jerry and I think you have to go around avoiding all these cats and collecting cheese. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching and have a great day.